think when the weather starts to warm up, everyone comes out in droves.
Oh, yes.
And it's been busy. So, yeah, it's been a great week.
That
Keeping
it
me on my
definitely has.
toes, that's for sure.
And we're halfway through it. So.
And we're halfway through. Happy Hump Day.
Yeah, exactly. Well, for Hump Day, we have a wonderful guest with us, Mr. Andrew Aust. Andrew Aust is an insurance agent with Comparion Insurance Agency. How's it going, Andrew?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Doing great. It's been a while. You been well?
I've been well. And you guys?
Good. It's been well. We Monday we were out at Meridian Golf Course, which is nice.
Cool.
Broadcasting live for a charity event. So
Awesome.
yeah, it was
Love
great. How's the insurance business treating you right now?
It's a roller coaster. It's good, but yeah.
What would you say are probably the most calls right now with everything springtime? Is there?
I think that we've gotten a lot of policy review calls. People wanted to look at, their coverages, look at their rates. That's a great thing about being part of a brokerage. We've got lots of options for people to find a good fit for them.
Yeah, I was actually curious with comparing how many providers do you work with?
So in Colorado here, we've got 23 providers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
You guys are busy. But real quick before we launch, thank you all for tuning in, listening to K4CO Radio. If you're on the app, you can always message on the app that you're listening to.
Mm-hmm.
You can also go on and see our beautiful faces. Yes, we are streaming live.
I did get all dolled up for today. So.
Well, if you believe Josh and you're not on Facebook, then please do so. K4CO Radio is on Facebook. And streaming live, it's really cool. In the comments section, you can ask our amazing Andrew insurance expert your questions. We're also on Instagram and YouTube and LinkedIn. So we are all over the place. So
We absolutely love questions. So
we do. We love interact because insurance is a big deal. And to educate yourself is really important. Andrew and I have been talking about that. Which is so vital. I mean, what insurance do you have? Do you actually know what's in your policy? What is really covered? What's your portion? There's so much to unpack. And I want to give amazing kudos to Andrew. He is here local in Colorado. So you can call him directly. What a novel concept. I absolutely love that. We talked about that this morning, about how important the relationship is. And it made me switch over to a local insurance company because I got so sick of the 1-800 number. So for those of you that have questions, if you want to know about rates, if you own a car, if you own a house, if you're renting, give Andrew a call. His direct number is 970-443-5111. It's very direct, no pun intended. It's an easy one to remember.
And that info will be scrolling on the bottom of the screen throughout the entire interview as well. Yes. So that being said, tell our listeners, the variety of types of insurance that you cover.
Sure. So we do kind of a pretty broad spectrum. We do everything from specialty line insurance to surplus and excess insurance, and I can explain those. We do pet insurance, we do home and auto insurance, we do some life insurance. We have a pretty broad spectrum of what we cover.
It still amazes me that there's pet insurance now.
It
wasn't when I was a kid. So.
Oh, it's actually very, very common.
Well, it's very expensive now too. So
not
the insurance, but taking care of a pet.
Oh, well, that's always been the case.
So,
Education is key. That will be my focus for today. If you go and look a little lovely Fluffy at a humane society, or you go to a pet store, if you're hanging out in the mall and your little kid goes, oh my God, he's so cute, and you make that impulse buy, we all have been at that moment. Please know, if you buy a Great Dane puppy, it will get bigger.
Yes, it will.
If you get a Mastiff, it will get bigger. The amount of times that they are expensive. They can be. It's a little mini, or sometimes not so mini, human being with a lot of fur. So they need to get shots. They need insurance. They need to be fed every once in a while. They need water. They need training. So there's my little soapbox about dogs are amazing. Cats are what they are. And animals all need love. I'm a dog person. But be smart and invest with the experts. So I'm curious, when you said specialty insurance, what's covered under that?
So specialty, that's kind of a generic name for RV insurance, ATV insurance, jet ski insurance, boat insurance. So we call those specialty lines because they're kind of your, your hobbies, your toys, things like that.
For sure. And all of it, we live in Colorado. We are an outdoor state.
We
So
are.
for all of those getting toys this summer,
Oh, yeah.
and those that have your toys already, this is a good time to call Andrew and figure out what you are actually covered for. You need insurance on those jet skis
Yes, you do.
and boats.
Yes.
It takes one little moment of not putting that plug into your boat, and it is now at the bottom of the lake.
That's right.
I will confirm maybe a little bit that I knew someone that did that.
Personal experience. I like
Yeah,
it.
we had a neighbor that did that.
Ouch.
They had a wine cork, actually, that she ran into the house and saw it sinking, and a wine cork fits in that same plug spot in the bottom of the boat.
Save the day. Wine cork,
It's,
save the day.
you know what? So drinking can sometimes help.
Wine has saved a lot of days in
Wine
my
has saved a
past.
lot of days.
How does someone figure out how much coverage they need? I think that's one of the biggest questions out there, no matter what we're talking about, what we're covering.
Sure. I think that it's a great thing to talk to an expert when you're trying to figure out coverage limits. It depends on what you're insuring. If you're insuring a house, the metrics that are used to kind of assess value and assess coverage are going to be different than what we'd use to, cover a car, or a boat.
Right.
So I think that to give a good example, a home is a great example. So there's different components to a homeowner's policy. So if we're talking about, your traditional single family home, you've got coverage for what's called your dwelling. So that would be your coverage A. You've got coverage for your personal property. That would be coverage C. And you need to look at all those components individually and kind of put them together in a package. So a homeowner's policy is actually a bunch of, effectively a bunch of little policies put together.
Right.
And it's important to look at all those pieces. For instance, on a dwelling, on a coverage A, you're looking at the value of the structure of your house, right? And so you're not necessarily looking at the value of your house and your land. You're looking at the value of your actual
Just
structure.
the brick and mortar, just
Correct.
right. Gotcha.
Yeah. And so what you look at there and how you would assess coverage on a home, you would look at what the value is. So we're going to look at metrics like from county records. We're also going to reference kind of sales estimates like Zillow and things like that. And then we're going to look at what the value of the land is versus the value of the structure. And we're going to insure for the structure. Because if you think about it, if your house burns down, you still have the land there. Right.
Mm-hmm.
True.
And so you need to know what it's going to cost to rebuild that. And that can be kind of complicated. So it's really important to talk to someone in the industry to figure that out.
Especially since the price of what it takes to build it keeps changing and fluctuating as well, especially these days, so just the price, that it's going to be today. In 1 year, it could be cheaper, it could be more expensive, whatever it would be.
Right. And it's interesting you say that. Insurance companies have started to do a coverage that's kind of tacked on to coverage A called expanded replacement cost. And so you're assessing a value for the structure, but then you're giving kind of almost, I would say it's a cushion, right? Because we don't know what's happening day to day with inflation, what's happening with, building material costs. Lumber is one of a material that is very volatile. It can be, talk about ups and downs on the stock market. Lumber pricing can fluctuate dramatically day to day.
Oh yeah.
I remember
definitely.
that. I think it was through COVID kind of
Yeah.
era,
Yeah.
if I recall, that it just skyrocketed,
Yeah.
and people who were in the middle of building a fence had to stop.
Right.
And I thought, whoa, that must have really shot up if you can't keep fluffy in your backyard now. But yeah, it does definitely fluctuate a lot.
You're right. I think at one point, and I don't know if it was during COVID or shortly after, I think that, in the span of a week, it went up like 4x. And I think that's what happened is people just kind of had to put the brakes on and stop.
That's crazy. I'm glad insurance does that. So it creates a little buffer because you do never know. And we
Right.
talked about umbrella policy the last time you were here. I highly recommend that for everyone, especially if you have, which people are coming to, if you have everything that you own
Sure.
under one roof. Hence umbrella. Yay.
Right.
I like what I just did there.
Yeah.
It's nice when my brain works at the end of the day. I mean, it's truly what I love the education piece for those that are buying a house, renting a house, buying a car. These are your biggest assets that you're ever going to own probably in your life.
Right.
Know what you're buying, know who's insuring it, and have someone that you can call directly. And to have that extra coverage because you never know. There's the things that we cover for are things that we already know, but an asteroid could hit tomorrow. And there's
Sure.
all these extreme outliers that we don't think about.
Right.
So I think having that buffer. Do you at Comparion offer if you get all of these different items, does it come in kind of a bundle package type of thing?
You can, yeah.
Okay.
And the neat thing is that you don't. So we have, a variety of different carriers, 23 carriers, and there's some packages where we can just do in agency packages. So maybe you like one carrier for your specialty lines and you like another carrier for your home. Not all the time, but sometimes we can offer discounts, when you're bundling just in agency.
Okay, gotcha.
It's nice that you offer and you have 23 different carriers. It allows it to really be tailored to the individual,
Agreed.
which is really nice. That's sometimes not always the case, where you kind of get pigeonholed and you don't have that flexibility.
Right.
I know we talk about like specific homeowners, but for those that are renters or multifamily, how does that shift in the insurance world?
Sure. So, owners and renters, you're going to be a little bit different in terms of what you're covering. But to start with, say, if we're talking about a condo policy, if you own a condo or a townhome, you're covering, you're personally covering just part of your insurance. With a condo or a townhome, usually you have what's called a master policy. And that's something that's generally governed by an HOA that will cover the exterior of the building. Because it's really hard to, say you have, a townhome it's got one roof for 6 different units, right?
Right.
If you were all individually trying to cover the outside of that, it would be kind of a nightmare because you say, well, what do I do? Draw a chalk line here and you're going to replace my roof to this chalk line. It's really hard to do it. So that's why they have what's called a master policy, which is a great thing to have that all covered, under one policy. The tricky part about it is you have to understand, what the coverage limits are in that master policy. And you can't always drill into that, I always tell people that own condos or townhomes, even if you don't like it, get to know your HOAs. It's really important. It's really important to be kind of present at those annual meetings. It's important to, look at the meeting minutes to see what's going on. And the other thing that's really important is to protect yourself on your personal policy so that you can cover maybe some potential gaps or some potential losses.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I've never thought about that until you actually brought it up. If you are in a multifamily unit, you have sometimes a landlord coming in. I will use where we are sitting, for example. So we have some of our own personal belongings in here.
Right.
We have a space that we're paying for, but we don't own the whole building. So it's, what if something catastrophic happened and a fire broke out in a different unit? How are we covered
Right.
versus the whole building, and who has the liability? So I think it is good to know that. So in that situation, do you know how that breakdown would go?
Sure, for your building right here?
Sure, but even like a multi-condo situation, multi-family, because you have the landlord, you have the person who owns the building, and then you have your own stuff.
Right.
So it's, where do those chalk lines come in?
Yeah. So typically, if you owned a condo, you would have a policy that was kind of referred to as studs in. So sometimes it's a little bit different, but in general, in Colorado here, the policies are written so that your individual policy is going to cover everything from the studs in the house. So your master policy will cover, your partition walls generally. It's going to cover your exterior walls, your exterior windows, your roof. Your policy is going to cover things like your cabinets, your floor coverings, your your wall fixtures, your light fixtures, and things like that. And so you are really writing a policy for, all the decoration in your house, and some of the functional items, your appliances and your cabinets, and then all of your personal property in the house.
Okay. I like that it studs in. That kind of made me smile. Yeah,
I thought it was just for dudes right there.
I did too. I was like, so you have all of your dudes, all your studs inside.
That's right.
Yeah, I like it.
I'm glad you talked about personal property because earlier with the house you said I want to say C is personal property. So I have a couple questions about that. What does, first of all, scheduling personal property mean?
Scheduling personal property. That's a great question. So scheduling property is generally used for things that are hard to value. So when you would schedule personal property, you'd be talking about things like pieces of art or jewelry or, maybe a family heirloom or something like that. And generally when you schedule things, you're going to schedule them on what's called a stated value or an agreed value. So that if there is a loss, there's no kind of negotiation back and forth.
It's black and white. This is what we agreed on.
Right.
Gotcha.
So say you are scheduling an engagement ring and you get it appraised. You get it appraised at $15,000. If there's a loss on that, it's written right in your policy that you have coverage for $15,000 for that item. There's no adjusters. There's no negotiation. It's just it's stated or it's agreed upon.
Gotcha. And when it comes to personal property, though, so I remember going through this with my house years ago, and I probably have to redo it again. But everything inside the house, from TVs to couches to everything like that, does that all kind of fall under a separate umbrella than personal property that you're talking about with art pieces and everything?
No, it's going to be under the same umbrella. It's just how you would designate value to that. So a lot of things like a TV or a couch, it's pretty easy for an insurance company to go, okay, we've got that. We've got a description of it. We can kind of assess what it would cost to replace it, right? If you're talking about a unique piece of art, one person's opinion may be wildly different than another person's.
Right.
And so that's where it's important to schedule it on an agreed value.
And is it very similar with personal property in a house and then say renters? Is it the same type of insurance right there?
For personal property, it is. It's very similar.
I love that you brought up art. I'm going through all of my kiddos' art, and that has no value to me. Like we've talked about,
Wow.
that sounded so bad. I meant the opposite. Geez, sorry.
I hope he's listening.
I hope he's not. I love you, kiddo, and get ready for bed. No, meaning that it's incredibly value to me. I can't put a value on it. And we talked about this last time you were in here. Like if anything goes in my safe, it's stuff that he's made. Like it's his footprint, because to me that's invaluable. Is that better?
Yeah, it's better.
So, okay. Has no value. That sounded terrible. It has the most value out of anything in there. But you brought up a good point about your belongings. So for a car, I'll use that as an example, because all of our belongings depreciate over time.
Right.
So if you buy a brand spanking new Ferrari, a 2026, because those are already out and those are beautiful and shiny and I can't afford it. But let's say I want to go buy one. When you insure that, is that the sticker value? Because the second you drive off that lot,
it loses money.
So how does that work with depreciating that quickly?
So that's a good example. Something like that, like a rare sports car or something like that, you would probably value that as, stated value or agreed value. It kind of depends, but things that maybe you have a different opinion on how it should be valued than, say, what the Blue Book values it at. You're going to want to insure that a different way. Now, for most vehicles, and you can't always do that, it's something that you have to discuss with your agent, because there are limitations and restrictions, as to what insurers are going to allow you to, to state the value
It
on.
would probably have to be a classic car, right?
Yeah, that's a great
Over
example.
30 years or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, but even like if you go buy a Subaru, let's say you buy a 40,000 brand new Subaru and it's off the lot, brand spanking new. And the second you drive it off that lot,
Yep.
Worth 30.
it's worth exactly. Don't get me on that soapbox, but and it goes. So, do you use the Blue Book value? Do you say like, oh, if I sold it on Facebook Marketplace,
Right.
here's my value. So it's interesting to me how to value belongings, but.
So typically you would have to use, the actual, or not agreed value, but the Blue Book value.
Okay.
So the depreciated value. Now, there are coverages that are available to kind of cover what's called that gap, and we call it
gap
gap
insurance.
insurance because, you're right. The second you drive it off that lot, the value goes from 40,000 to a lot less, right?
Let's just say
Yeah,
a lot less. Yeah.
Very PC.
And if you have say you have a loan on it, that's where gap insurance would come in. You would want to basically cover that so that if your car is totaled, the bank doesn't say, okay, your insurance paid for this portion, but you still owe us this much,
Right.
because they're going to cover it on, that Blue Book value.
There's someone out there that bought a brand new car and got in an accident, actually still on the lot.
Or driving
that
it home
happened.
from the lot, yeah.
Yeah, that happened. So that would be an interesting, you have a brand new shipment of 52 Ferraris and they all fell off the truck.
Oh, that's a bad day.
It's happened.
That's a real
I
bad
remember
day.
that actually happened here in Colorado. Sorry, I got derailed.
No.
Well, I like this next one because you had said you probably need to check your insurance policy again.
Well, I just remember, so I remember talking to my insurance and they wanted to know pretty much everything in the house. And I spent days just like, okay, I have a Sony 55-inch TV. I have, just a whole list of stuff, and then submitted it to them. And I don't remember the process as to where they came up with a number, but yeah, I do remember doing all of that, but that was years ago.
Right. So, Andrew, how many times a year would you suggest going through your policy?
So I think an annual policy review is a good thing to do. I don't necessarily think you need to go through it more than once a year unless you have, something significant that's changed, right? And I'll give you a good example of that. Say you replace your roof. That is a great time to call your insurance agent because in general, in Colorado, you're probably replacing it with hail-resistant shingles. There's discounts for that. Right. And so if you have, I would say annually, unless you have something significant that changes.
Okay.
And then, I would use that as a point to contact your agent.
You bring up another really good point. We obviously have hail here. We had a tornado touchdown last week, I think. So when you have people come out, you have your roofer come out, you have the window guy, and they say, sometimes we will contact your insurance company or we'll write a new policy-ish for you. What do you recommend in that situation?
I would not have your roofer necessarily contact your insurance agent, not necessarily because they're going to do anything wrong or right, but just because I think it's important for you to be involved in that process.
Right.
The one thing that you don't want to do, if you're not sure if you should file a claim, talk to your agent. Don't call a 1-800 number and just say, hey, I've got a roof claim. Because what can happen if they say, well, no, actually you don't, there's still something that can go on your record called a $0 claim, and that stays on your record. So
kind of like a credit check.
Kind of, yeah. You have everyone that has insurance has something that's called an insurance score. So it's kind of like a credit score for insurance. And that's why that's another reason why it's a good idea to have a local agent, right? So talk it through with your agent first before you decide to file a claim. Now you brought up roofers. There's some really great roofers here, local roofers in Colorado. And they will come out and do an inspection for you. There's a couple roofers that will, if you do business with them, they'll come and do an annual inspection for you, and they will assess it. And that's a great way to get a professional out there to take a look at it before you just call your insurance company. Because if you go, it hailed yesterday, and I think I might need to file a claim, that's probably not the process you want to go through. You want to get a little bit more involved in that. Just again, because of that possibility of a $0 claim.
I never heard that. Does that have any effect on your credit score, or is this a totally separate?
It doesn't necessarily have an effect on your credit score, but it does have an effect on your insurance score.
Okay.
Yep.
So no crossover. It's a good point to have someone come out. I like that service providers are starting to do that. A lot of HVAC companies are doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's nice when they just kind of ding you. It's like, hey, it's time to blow out your sprinklers. It's like, oh yeah, now I have to reactivate that. Or you don't think about your heater until something goes out. I know from personal unfortunate experience that you need heating and air conditioning in our wonderful state of Colorado.
You do.
And you don't want to wait till something blows. And it's nice when they go, hey, it's been a year. Or, hey, it's been 6 months. We're just going to pop over and make sure it's working. Because you don't want it to go, like a car is another good example. You wait. I wait till it's the very last moment. And then I go, crap.
Well, I find it funny how now we have, not only car insurance, but now we have repair insurance for your car.
That's true. How do you feel about that in the insurance world?
I think that supplements like AAA and things like that are great. One thing insurance is not very good at when we're talking about, car insurance is maintenance. Insurance is really designed for catastrophic events.
Right.
And so having things like, a AAA or something to that effect for maintenance is a really good thing to have.
I love it. It's kind of like health insurance. It's there really for catastrophic things. But if you have, a minor cold or a minor scrape or something, you don't have to use insurance in that situation.
Right.
Kind of the same thing in your world. That's cool. I know we touched on this about liability insurance, and why would you say it's really important to take a look at that?
I think that liability insurance is really important because the purpose of liability insurance is basically to protect your asset portfolio. If, they call them car accidents because obviously no one intends to get into a car wreck, right?
Usually, yeah.
Usually, right? we would hope that was the case. But there is still a component. If you are at fault in a car accident and you hurt someone, you're liable for that. And if you hurt someone really bad, that financial liability could be, pretty big. And the way I like to look at liability is kind of to take an overview of your asset portfolio, right? So we're looking at the value of your belongings, and that includes, cars, homes, rental properties, boats, along with your financial products too. So your 401k, your IRAs and things like that. Typically what you want to do is you want to kind of take a valuation of those things, and you want to have insurance coverage that is at least equal to that asset portfolio.
Wow. Oh no, sorry.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I know it's not something that we think about a lot, but that's really important because the last thing you want is, to have an accident and not have enough liability coverage, and then, people are coming after you and your asset portfolios instead of, that being covered by your insurance. And so that's kind of the, that's kind of the broad stroke of how I like to look at it. have liability coverage to cover your asset portfolio.
Yeah, no, it's important, I think, to diversify. Is Josh and I both were in more, not the insurance world, but in the finance world. He was in it for longer than me, about 14, 15 years, and I was in it for about a decade. And it really is to protect you, to not only insure your belongings, but also, yeah, they unfortunately, that's the world we live in, is they're going to come after you, your personal world. So if you can spread it out in whatever way you can, so it is all about protecting your loved ones and your assets, as
Right.
you said. So be smart, people, and have someone here locally. If you're just tuning in, don't worry. The full interview will be saved forever on YouTube, and you can still see it on Facebook for an entire month. We have Andrew Aust in here from Comparion Insurance, and you can call him directly for all of your insurance needs.
An actual human being answers.
Actual human
it's
being.
really awesome.
I do love
actually.
it. I literally switched this last year to someone here locally. I didn't know you yet, but it's amazing to have someone here local. 970-443-5111. Because truly, I had a question on a Sunday night, and he got back to me in 30 seconds. I was like, yeah, I need this policy, tonight. Sorry to ask you for that. And boom, it was in my inbox. I was like, that is amazing that you can do that.
That's great service.
It is great, sir.
Keep that agent around.
That's right.
I exactly. Well, it's the same as you. We text and call all the time. I'm like, I have these questions, and
That's what you get with local service. That's right.
it is really nice. It's important. If you're protecting the biggest things that you own and that have the most value, have a human being that you can talk to.
Right.
It's so frustrating in today's world to call a 1-800 number or an email. I love those. Just send us an email and we'll get back to you in 48 hours. I'm like, cool, my house is on fire, so we'll just put you on hold for a hot minute.
I'll use my neighbor's computer to catch that email.
Exactly. Yes.
If somebody's listening in and they're just like, you know what, maybe I should get, my auto insurance double checked, my home insurance, anything like that. Is it something as simple as just getting a copy of their statement to send over to you, or what do they need to prepare to give you so that you can completely look it over for them?
The best thing to do is to get a copy of what's called your declaration page. So it's a part of your insurance policy, and it's basically the page that lists out all of your coverages. That is, I always recommend that people do that because, I don't expect everyone to be able to rattle off all of their coverages on their insurance policy.
I don't think anybody can. Maybe you can,
Well,
but probably not people outside of that industry.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it just, it just takes some work off of them too. I mean, we can go through it. I can have an hour and a half conversation with you and talk about all of the coverage limits that you may need on an insurance policy, but it's a lot easier. You have that resource at your disposal. So yeah, if you can get a declaration page over for your insurance, then we can just go through it all. Look at, what your coverages are, make sure you don't have any gaps in coverage.
Right.
And make sure that you're paying, a reasonable rate for what you're getting.
Because in order to really get the best rate and get the best insurance, it's not something you can just fill out stuff online, because you actually, you need to speak with them about everything they have, about what they need. And it's not something that an AI computer can just it'll miss something. That's something when it comes to the new AI stuff. It can't do stuff like you do because it just will not catch everything.
I think it's really important, just like financial products, to have a human being, do it.
Especially a local human being that you can talk to anytime.
I'm a little biased, but I do agree with you.
I agree. My financial people are here. I know. It's just, man, maybe I'm getting a little wiser as I'm getting older. Because I used to be in that 1-800 rut, and I'm like, nope, I need someone to talk to me. And it is really, I wanted to share, I think I might have mentioned this last time we talked, for those that are listening, just for a fluke accident that I had. I had moved into my new home, was there maybe a month, and I pulled out in my car, and I knew the garage door was open, and I hit the garage door. Oof. And I had my kiddo. It's the only time I've been with my kiddo, and I thought, I know that I opened the garage door. I never do that. So my car was so big that the rope actually from the garage door hooked onto the top of my car, and it collided. And we were really lucky. The garage door actually stayed, and it didn't. Sometimes it comes all the way down. But I didn't know, number one, what my deductible. I literally, like, I just gotten my home insurance done. I'm like, here we are. So I'm like, hi, it's me. But is that, does it fall under car insurance? Does it fall under home insurance? And what is my deductible? And so it was so nice to have someone that I could talk to walk me through that. Because
Sure.
I never would think about that. What are the
Well, and
chances of that?
It's very situational too, and
Exactly.
that's again why it's good to have a professional you can talk to.
I agree. And it is to walk you through it, because it is, for me, it's all the, and back in the financial world, there's so much, I call it the legalese of the world. And for me, it's very hard to decipher what it all means. So to break it down in layman's terms, like, okay, if I file this, what does that look like for me?
Right.
So even my windshield, for example, has lots of nicks in it. And does your insurance, like, I'll ask that to you. If you go and get it filled at Safe Flight, say whatever that company is, they come and fix your windshield. And they always say the little dings don't affect your insurance. True, not true.
So for comprehensive claims in Colorado, they shouldn't. Now they will show up on your insurance report, but they should not affect your rate.
Okay.
You're talking about your insurance credit report?
Right. So your insurance score. So
Right,
you
your
will
insurance
see you will see those things on there. But window claims, comprehensive claims in Colorado should not have an effect on your rate.
Okay.
It's again just always good to talk to someone though before you file anything.
Yeah, I agree.
And you cover pretty much all of Colorado right now.
Yep.
And what is the phone number if someone wanted to shoot you a text? Is that the direct one, the 970?
Yep. Same number.
970-443-5111. And working with over 20 different providers, which is amazing. Do you get a lot of people where they do kind of mix and match with different providers? Because everybody's heard about the whole bundling thing with one company. And it may save you money, but it may have some drawbacks.
Sure.
So do you have a lot of people that actually pick and choose from different companies?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's situational. Again, sometimes the bundle is the way to go. Sometimes the unbundle, as we like to call it, is the way to go. Sometimes it's better to say you have, a jet ski. Maybe it's better to have that on a standalone policy versus connected to your home policy. I'll give you another example. Say you have an e-bike. We cover those.
Those are huge now. Yep.
Yeah. So say you can endorse an e-bike on your homeowner's policy, but say your homeowner's policy deductible is $5,000. Do you really want to pay that if your e-bike gets stolen?
That's an expensive e-bike.
That's an expensive e-bike.
How much are they? What's a brand new e-bike?
Oh, geez.
Probably a
They
couple
probably
grand.
start at $1,000.
Yep.
And then
I
go
mean,
up from there.
you could spend over $10,000 on an e-bike.
So maybe the $5,000 isn't so bad.
If you have the Ferrari of e-bikes,
I don't have an e-bike, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's not bad, except for the fact that if you have your e-bike endorsed on your homeowner's policy, if you file a claim, that claim is going to show up on your homeowner's policy and affect your insurance score. If you have that on a separate policy, with hopefully a lower deductible than $5,000, you can have that covered, and it won't, it shouldn't affect your homeowner's, rates.
So this insurance score that you're talking about, it kind of depends on what the coverage is. So if you do something with your car, it doesn't affect your house.
It depends. It depends on, your rates are connected to a couple different systems. There's a system called Clue, and Clue reports comprehensive claims. And then there's your MVR report, and that's your driving history report. So you have, a ticket for reckless driving or things like that. That's going to show up on your MVR report. There are carriers that have programs for, say, recreational vehicles and things like that will not report to Clue. And so if you, say, have a theft on an e-bike, you can file that claim without having to worry about that being reported on your Clue report.
I have never heard about this before. Can anyone go and look up this Clue report? And does Mr. Green and Mr. White show up as we're playing Clue?
You, I don't know about that.
Okay. I'm like, are you seeing where I'm going?
Great game though.
It was a good game.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
movie.
there's a database called LexisNexis. It's the same database that, lawyers use for things. It's basically a database where you can go and you can look up your Clue report or your MVR report.
Cool. Okay. That's interesting. And that fluctuates, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, it's just dependent on what's on your record. Yeah. So
Okay.
typically things will stay on a Clue report for 5 years.
Okay.
Yep. And that won't necessarily impact your, your insurance rates for that full 5 years, but that's how long they generally will show up there.
Very interesting. Okay. Yeah, because your driving record, I don't even know how long that goes. The NVR report, is that the same as about 5 years?
Typically, yeah.
Okay.
I think it probably depends on what it is.
What it is,
And I don't know all the ins and outs of that.
Okay. Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot. This is just new to
We
me.
could bring Officer Bob in. He could probably tell us.
Ooh, Officer Bob.
We do. We will have some sheriffs in here
Cool.
that are good guys. They're amazing. We love our cops and we love our sheriffs. Thank you for protecting and serving.
Agreed.
I know, it was so funny. In my 20s, I avoided them, and now I'm like, come, hang around me, protect me. I'm not crazy anymore.
I think that's most people on their path to adulthood.
And their path, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's why I'm like, maybe I should go check out this report and see how far back it goes. But
Well, definitely checking insurance once a year, you say, is a pretty good thing. And you can basically, I like your style. I like the broker, because then you have all these different providers that you can look at and just make sure that you are not only paying the least amount, but with a company that is really providing you the best.
Sure.
So that's what I really like about it.
I had another quick question. So, when people call you, if they are buying a house, do you have different service providers that you all recommend? Like if they need a roofer or an HVAC person?
Yeah, we've got all kinds of different referral partners.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, just people that we've connected with, and every agent's going to be a little bit different, but that is something that most insurance agents will have is a recommended partner. I think for me personally, I think that's a really good way to do business. I'm a big believer in the referral partner. Just kind of aspect of business. I like to be able to tell people, I'm not a roofer, but I've got a guy or I got a gal that can help you out with that.
That's very true. I feel the same way. It's kind of those trusted providers, and yeah, I do too. That's why we love being out in the community, as do you. A shout out to you and your community involvement with the Inglewood Chamber and so many other different groups that you're involved with. You're just everywhere.
Well, likewise, you guys are prolific out there.
We have clones, but just don't tell anyone.
I won't.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I don't remember what you just said.
I love it. Yes.
We're trying to slow that down though, like in the movie Multiplicity, the
That's
later
true.
clones,
Well,
they're
they
not that
need-
smart.
Yeah,
They're not
it
that
starts
bright.
to get messy.
Yep. One thing that I heard was something about loss assessment insurance. What is loss assessment insurance?
So loss assessment generally it's connected to all homeowners insurance, but where it's really important is going back to that multifamily home. So if you own a condo or you own a townhome, so
And this is the person who lives in the condo, or the owners of the entire building, I guess.
So it would be for the person who lives in the condo.
In the condo, okay.
Yep. And what that does, what loss assessment insurance is there for, is I'll give you a scenario. Say your HOA that their rates went through the roof last year.
Oh, that never happens.
Never. And they had to make a decision about how much they wanted to increase their homeowners rates for your HOA dues, right? And maybe part of that discussion, or part of that negotiation involved their insurance policies. And they said, well, our insurance is going way up. We need to figure out a way to combat that. So we're going to raise the deductible on the master policy up, right?
Right.
Say there was a total loss, say there was a gigantic hailstorm, and they realized when they went to file a claim that it didn't make sense, it wasn't responsible for them to, completely liquidate all of their assets to pay that deductible. And they would make the decision to say, do a special assessment. And a special assessment for a loss like that would be, they would say, well, for the next 6 months, instead of paying X dollar amount, you're going to pay X dollar amount plus this so we can help cover this loss.
So it's like a payment program.
Right, on that side.
Right.
Now, what loss assessment coverage would do is instead of you having to incur that special assessment out of your pocket, you could pay that special assessment through your loss assessment insurance, right? The best example I can give, I actually had, my wife's cousin has a condo. I actually don't know if they still have it. They had a condo up in Dillon. And there was some repair work that was being done to an external walkway, kind of like what you'd see on the second story of like a motel. You've got those external walkways. Well, they had an engineer come out and he condemned the whole walkway. He said, this is not safe. You have to replace this or I'm going to condemn the building.
Wow.
What that turned out to be is a $10,000 cost to each resident. Now, I'm using that as an example, but that wouldn't be something that you could cover under loss assessment because it was wear and tear. But just to give you an example of what a special assessment could be. Now, say it was the result of a sudden event like a hailstorm.
That's not wear and tear.
That's not wear and tear.
Right. Some as event. Yeah.
If you had a loss like that and they, did a special assessment, you could have that covered through loss assessment insurance. So going back to multifamily, that's why it's really important to kind of understand where your coverage stops and your master policy coverage starts and what that covers. And sometimes you can't know that to a T. And so things like loss assessment insurance are good kind of buffers, if you will, safety nets for oops, what ifs.
Gosh, I think, wow, I know you said a year. I think 6 months. I would throw that out there. There's so many things that happen, and
Sure.
at least my brain isn't like, oh my gosh, I need to call my insurance agent. When you were talking about the sidewalk, I'm like, won't the city pay for that? But they don't.
It depends. It depends on what is under management or what is under ownership for your HOA.
Right.
Depends what's owned by the city and what's not. What's owned by maybe your community. I lived in a community that owned a park, and we only had 126 homes. And I would say 85% of our dues went to just park maintenance.
Yep.
I
I had that up north. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really dependent on what your community owns. Again, going back to why it's so important if you live, especially if you live in a in a multifamily unit like a townhome or a condo, it's so important to be involved with your HOA and understand what your assets are, right? Because it's not just what you have inside. If you're part of a community that owns a pool, well,
That's part of it.
that's part of your assets, and that's also part of your liability.
Right. Gotcha.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh. I'm glad we're having this discussion. It is. It's all about the education piece. I don't think about that. I'm like, it's a community pool. I don't
Right.
have any liability if another kiddo, but I'm going to use Loveland as my example. We are all homeowners around a lake in Loveland, and if something catastrophic happens, it falls on all of us homeowners, which is not great because you kind of take the liability when it's someone else's fault. But, we all live there. It's very interesting.
It's a community.
It is. Well, and things change so often. Like I'll use my previous HOA's example, and they kind of slide it in there that things are changing. It's not always like, hey, your rates are going up,
Sure.
red alert. It's like, hey, we've decided to change the grass around the park areas. And this cost has now gone up, a couple $1,000s. So we're passing it off. But it's in the fine print at the very end when people are scrolling through their 10 pages. And then you get the next bill and you're like, what just happened? So it's good to have, I'm going to do it every 6 months. That's just me personally, though.
I mean, it never hurts to have somebody take a look at it.
I agree.
You know, and Andrew, I know you very well, and I'm sure there's been clients where you're just like, you know what, you're good. You're sitting pretty good.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm not going to help you because, you know, you're fine right there. You know, it's just about getting those eyes on it, you know, just like in finances, stuff like that. Everything's constantly changing. It's nice to have a second look or a third look. So, I highly recommend doing that. 9704-435-1111, Andrew Aust with Comparion Insurance Agency, working with over 20 different providers, which I absolutely love. So, I haven't had my stuff looked at in a while.
It's time.
I think it's time.
I know a really good agent.
I know one too, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
It's free to call you
Yep.
and look over all of your stuff. And why not?
And it never hurts. It really doesn't. And I am, you know, my primary job, I would say, is to make sure people are protected, right? And, you know, if I can't offer that protection and they're good where they're at, then that's great, you know, but at least you have a second set of eyes on it. The other thing is sometimes it doesn't make sense to change your policy, but maybe you want to modify some things on there. You know, I do that for people all the time. Say, look, I can't beat your rate, or this is great coverage, but you should tweak this and this.
Yeah.
You know.
It's nice. You're very honest and ethical. And another thing that's wonderful when you come by it, hang on to those people. And thank you for doing that for people. Anything else that you wanted to mention that is important in the insurance world as we go into summer?
insure your toys.
Insure your
that's the
toys,
first thing,
for
in
sure.
springtime. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, definitely insure your toys. You know, and you'd be surprised. It's not as expensive as people think it is to do that. And, you know, it's a great thing to do. You know, the last thing you want is to have a houseboat without insurance where you've got 16 people having a party on it.
Yep. I can't confirm or deny. I've never had a houseboat. I'm throwing myself under the bus today. This is amazing. Yes, insure all of your toys.
Yep.
You have liability risk insurance. It's a big part of life. So cover yourself for sure.
And even if you just have any questions, Andrew is very happy to help out. So, yeah, thank you very much, Andrew. It's always been a pleasure having you in here and speaking about this, because I love this speaking because I don't want to know about it. I want to leave it to the pros because I have enough going on in my brain. So I really like when we have professionals in here that can help out. So
I do too. It's stuff that I never think about. And I think most people don't. You get a policy and you go, well, I'm taken care of. And it's kind of behind you. But so many things in our world change. Right. We sell a car, we buy a car, we get married, we get divorced, you have another child, you have less stuff in your house, you have more stuff in your house. You know, it's jewelry is another thing that I rarely think about.
Sure.
And that's a big part of it. You can have expensive heirlooms, and so call the professional. I agree. So again, it's Andrew Aust with Comparion Insurance, 970-443-5111. Thank you again for coming in.
Thanks for having me. This was great.
It's always very educational, and I need that.
You've been listening to K4CO Live interview with Andrew Aust. Thank you very much for tuning in. Stay tuned at 7 o'clock. We got one solid hour of Colorado-only artists on your way. Just one big melting pot of all different genres for Colorado. Thank you for tuning in, and have a wonderful evening.